I'm Thelma, 62 years old, and until recently I lived with my daughter Amanda and her husband James. I had spent $25,000 on first-class tickets to Hawaii as a special gift for them. But on my birthday last month, everything changed when Amanda looked me straight in the eyes and called me a burden. That night, I found myself homeless in the freezing rain. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button to find out how I turned this heartbreaking betrayal into a lesson they'll never forget. 5 years ago, my husband Gerald passed away from heart disease. We'd been married for 37 years, and suddenly I was alone in our 4-bedroom house in Connecticut. I taught elementary school for almost 4 decades before retiring, just months before Gerald died. The timing seemed cruel. We had planned to travel and enjoy our golden years together, but fate had other plans. Our daughter Amanda was our only child. She and James lived about an hour away with their daughter Lily, who was just a toddler then. After Gerald's funeral, Amanda suggested I consider moving closer to them. "Mom, that house is too big for you now," she said with genuine concern, "and we'd love to have you closer to help with Lily. She needs her grandma in her life." I resisted at first. The house contained all my memories with Gerald, the kitchen where we danced while cooking Sunday dinners, the garden we had nurtured together for decades, the living room where we'd watched countless old movies cuddled on the sofa. But as the months passed, the silence became deafening. Every corner echoed with Gerald's absence. When Amanda called one evening, sounding stressed about childcare costs and their mortgage, I made a decision that would change everything. "What if I sell the house and move in with you?" I suggested. "I could help with Lily and I could contribute financially to the household." Amanda nearly dropped the phone with excitement. "Mom, are you serious? That would be amazing. We have that finished basement with the bathroom. We could convert it into a perfect suite for you. And Lily would be thrilled." James got on the phone too. "Thelma, that's incredibly generous. We'd make sure you had your own space and privacy." Within 2 months, I had sold our home for $480,000. It was a good market, and the house had appreciated significantly over the decades. After paying off our small remaining mortgage, I had a substantial sum. "I want to help you pay off your mortgage," I told Amanda and James when the sale finalized. "It would give all of us more financial freedom." They protested politely at first, but not for long. I transferred $300,000 to them, which paid off their mortgage entirely. I kept the rest for my retirement, feeling secure that I was doing the right thing. My financial advisor cautioned me about giving away such a large sum, but I brushed off his concerns. "They're my family," I told him. "What's the point of having money if I can't help my daughter?" Moving in with them seemed perfect at first. My suite in the basement was comfortable with a bedroom sitting area and private bathroom. I had my own entrance, but I rarely used it, preferring to be part of the household upstairs. Lily, who was 4 by then, was delighted to have me there. Every morning she would come downstairs and climb into my bed for story time before breakfast. I quickly fell into a routine. I watched Lily while Amanda and James worked. She was a marketing executive and he was an IT consultant. I cooked dinners, kept the house tidy, and did the grocery shopping. I insisted on paying for groceries and contributing to the utilities. "You're doing enough just by helping with Lily," Amanda protested, but I waved her off. "I'm living here too," I said. "I want to contribute." In the evenings we would all have dinner together, and on weekends we often took Lily to the park or museums. It felt like the family unit I had missed since Gerald died. I was busy, useful, and surrounded by people I loved. For the first year, it seemed like the perfect arrangement. As Lily's 5th birthday approached, I started planning something special. I'd always dreamed of taking a family trip to Hawaii. Gerald and I had visited for our 25th anniversary and had always talked about bringing Amanda someday. Now I wanted to create that memory with my daughter and her family. I secretly began researching and planning. First-class tickets for 4 would be expensive, nearly $25,000, but I could afford it. I wanted this to be spectacular. I envisioned us all on the beach watching Lily build her first sandcastle, seeing the wonder in her eyes at the ocean waves. I pictured family dinners with sunset views and excursions to volcanoes and waterfalls. It would be the trip of a lifetime. Little did I know that while I was planning this generous gift, things were already beginning to change in ways I couldn't yet see. About 14 months after I moved in, I started noticing subtle changes in Amanda and James's behavior. It began with small things, conversations that would stop when I entered a room, shared glances between them when I made suggestions, calls that Amanda would take in another room rather than in front of me. One evening I overheard Amanda telling Lily, "Grandma has her own way of doing things, but Mommy knows best, okay?" When she thought I couldn't hear. It was about something trivial, how I had organized Lily's toys, but the dismissive tone stung. At dinner, my opinion seemed to carry less weight. When I suggested we might plant a vegetable garden in the backyard, James immediately shot down the idea. "We don't have time for that kind of project, Thelma," he said curtly, "and we like our yard as it is." I noticed they began making family decisions without consulting me. They redecorated the living room without asking for my input, though I spent as much time there as anyone. They planned weekend activities and only informed me afterward, sometimes leaving me alone in the house for entire Saturdays. "We thought you'd enjoy some quiet time," Amanda would say with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The dynamic with Lily remained sweet, but even there I sensed increasing restrictions. Amanda began creating more structured schedules for her daughter, leaving less free time for us to spend together. "Lily needs consistency," Amanda explained when I questioned it. "Too much grandma time isn't good for her routine." I tried to respect their parenting choices, but it hurt to have my time with my granddaughter limited. I'd raised Amanda successfully. Surely I knew something about childcare. Around the 16-month mark of living there, I noticed something concerning. Amanda had purchased some expensive new furniture and a large television. James had upgraded his car to a newer luxury model. They had begun taking weekend trips without Lily, leaving her with me. "Business is really good right now," James explained when I commented on their new spending habits. But something didn't feel right. On a Tuesday afternoon while doing laundry, I overheard a conversation from the kitchen that made my heart sink. "What about the money issue?" James was saying in a low voice. "Mom doesn't need to know everything," Amanda replied. "The money she gave us was a gift. We can do what we want with our house equity." "But what if she expects to live here permanently?" James asked. "That wasn't the plan." "Let's talk about this later," Amanda whispered. That evening, I tried to broach the subject with Amanda while we were alone in the kitchen. "Sweetheart, is everything okay with you and James? I feel like something's changed." She brushed it off immediately. "Everything's fine, Mom. James is just stressed about work. Don't make mountains out of molehills." The dismissal was clear, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. That night, I logged into my bank account to review my finances. My retirement account was still healthy, and the money I had kept from the house sale remained untouched. The Hawaii trip would make a dent, but I could afford it. Still, a growing sense of unease settled over me. The next week, I noticed Amanda spending a lot of time on her computer when she thought I wasn't looking. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen unexpectedly and caught a glimpse of her screen before she hurriedly closed it. It appeared to be information about senior living communities in the area. When I mentioned it casually the next day, she became defensive. "I was just doing research for a friend's parent," she snapped. "Why are you spying on me?" I hadn't been spying, but her reaction only heightened my concerns. That same week, a piece of mail arrived for me, a bank statement. I usually receive these documents electronically, so a paper copy was unusual. When I opened it later in my room, I realized it had already been opened and resealed. Someone had been looking at my financial information. I felt violated, but tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps it had been opened by mistake. But combined with everything else, a picture was beginning to form that I didn't want to see. One where my presence was no longer welcomed, but my money still was. The final confirmation came when I discovered a notepad by the phone with James's handwriting. At the top was written Thelma's accounts, followed by several numbers that I recognized as my account balances. Numbers that I had never shared with them. I felt sick to my stomach. How had they accessed this information? Had they gone through my personal papers while I was out? The trust I had placed in them began to crumble. That night, I lay awake wondering how things had changed so dramatically. Just a year and a half ago, they had welcomed me with open arms. Now, I felt like an intruder in their home, an intruder whose financial resources were being monitored. I still had the Hawaii trip planned for Amanda's upcoming birthday, just 3 months away. I had already paid for the tickets but hadn't told them about it yet. I had intended it to be a surprise gift, a gesture of love and gratitude for welcoming me into their home. Now, I wasn't sure what it represented anymore. As the weeks passed, the atmosphere in the house grew increasingly tense. Amanda and James began hosting dinner parties without including me. I would hear laughter and conversation from upstairs, while sitting alone in my basement apartment. When I would venture up to join the reception was cool at best. "Oh, Mom, I didn't think you'd be interested in this crowd," Amanda would say. "It's just work people." But I recognized some of their friends, couples we had previously socialized with together. Now they greeted me awkwardly, as if they'd been told something about me that made them uncomfortable. Lily remained my joy, but even our relationship was being affected. Amanda implemented new rules about when I could spend time with her. "She needs to focus more on educational activities," Amanda said one day when I asked if Lily could help me bake cookies. "Maybe another time." But another time rarely came. Lily would often sneak down to see me, and her innocent questions broke my heart. "Grandma, are you sick? Mommy said you need lots of rest. That's why I can't come down to play." "No, sweetheart," I assured her. "I'm perfectly healthy." The kitchen, once a shared space where I had happily prepared meals for everyone, became contested territory. Amanda began criticizing my cooking. "Mom, these casseroles are so old-fashioned, and they're too heavy. James and I are trying to watch our carbs." When I adjusted and made lighter meals, the complaints continued. "We're really trying to eat more organic foods. These vegetables aren't organic." Eventually, I stopped cooking for them altogether and prepared my own simple meals in the evening after they had finished. James became particularly critical of my presence in the common areas. If I was watching television in the living room, he would sigh heavily upon entering. "Thelma, do you mind if we watch something else? This is our downtime after all." I began spending more time in my basement apartment to avoid the constant feeling that I was in their way. My world was shrinking room by room. One Saturday morning, James approached me with what he presented as a suggestion, but felt more like a directive. "Thelma, Amanda, and I have been talking. We think it might be good for you to look into getting your own place, nothing far, maybe somewhere in this neighborhood. You could have your own space, but still be close enough to see Lily regularly." I was stunned. "I thought we had an agreement. I helped pay off your mortgage with the understanding that this would be my home too." James's expression hardened. "That was a gift, Thelma. We didn't sign a contract, and circumstances change. Amanda and I need our privacy, our own family time." "What about Lily? I help with her care every day while you both work." "We're looking into after-school programs," he replied coldly. "They'd be better for her social development anyway." That afternoon, while Amanda and James were out with Lily, I discovered something that confirmed my worst suspicions. While looking for a screwdriver to fix a loose cabinet handle in the kitchen, I found financial documents in a drawer. Among them was a statement for a new investment account in James and Amanda's names, funded with $150,000. The date of the initial deposit coincided with when they had begun their new spending habits. They had taken half the money I had given them for the mortgage and invested it for themselves, all while making plans to remove me from the home I had helped pay for. My confusion turned to anger. I had been naive too, trusting. I remembered my financial advisor's warning, which I had dismissed so easily. In my desire to help my daughter and be close to my family, I had made myself vulnerable. That evening, I attempted to do more around the house, cleaning thoroughly and preparing an elaborate dinner. Perhaps if I proved my value, they would reconsider. Amanda came home and barely acknowledged the clean house or the meal waiting on the table. "We already ate out," she said dismissively. "And you shouldn't have moved things in Lily's room. I can't find her science project materials." I had simply organized the clutter, placing her project supplies neatly on her desk. But my efforts were not just unappreciated. They were seen as intrusions. James began leaving real estate listings for senior apartments on the counter where I would find them. The message was clear, but I wasn't ready to give up my home or access to my granddaughter, and I certainly wasn't prepared to walk away from the substantial investment I had made in their house. As my birthday approached, I clung to hope that perhaps things would improve. Maybe the tension was temporary, a phase in our adjustment to living together. I still hadn't mentioned the Hawaii trip now, just 6 weeks away. In my heart, I hoped it might serve as a reset button for our relationship, a way to reconnect away from the stresses of everyday life. But with each passing day, as I was made to feel more and more like an unwelcome guest, rather than family, I began to question whether I should still give them this expensive gift. The dream vacation I had planned with such joy now felt tainted by doubt and hurt. My birthday would mark exactly 18 months since I had moved in with them. Little did I know it would also mark the end of our living arrangement in a way I never could have imagined. My 62nd birthday fell on a Tuesday in November. I woke up early feeling a mixture of hope and apprehension. Despite the growing tension, I still hoped the day might bring some warmth back to our relationship. I went upstairs and prepared a special breakfast. Belgian waffles with fresh berries and whipped cream, a family favorite since Amanda was a child. When Amanda and James came upstairs already dressed for work, they barely glanced at the spread on the table. "We're running late," Amanda said, grabbing a travel mug for her coffee. "Meeting at 8. James didn't even make eye contact as he followed her out. Neither of them acknowledged my birthday. Lily came down in her pajamas after they left, her sleepy eyes lighting up at the sight of the waffles. "Happy birthday, Grandma!" she exclaimed, handing me a homemade card decorated with glitter and crayon drawings. "I made this all by myself." I hugged her tightly, fighting back tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is the best present I could ask for." "Mommy said your birthday isn't a big deal because you're old now," Lily said innocently as she dug into her waffle. "But I think birthdays are always special." Her words stung, but I smiled for her sake. "You're absolutely right, Lily. Every birthday is a blessing." After taking Lily to school, I spent the day alone. I received a few phone calls from old colleagues and friends, but nothing from Amanda. By evening, I had resigned myself to a quiet, uneventful birthday. Around 6, Amanda called. "Mom, James and I are going out for dinner. There are leftovers in the fridge for you. We'll be back late, so don't wait up." "It's my birthday," I said quietly. A pause. "Right. Well, happy birthday. We'll bring you a dessert or something." They didn't even invite me to join them for dinner on my birthday. I sat in my apartment that evening looking at old photo albums, pictures of Amanda's childhood birthdays where Gerald and I had gone all out with themes and cakes, pictures of family vacations, including that magical trip to Hawaii with Gerald. I had been so excited to recreate that experience with my daughter and her family. Around 10:30, I heard them come home. They were talking loudly the way people do after having a few drinks. I considered staying in my room, but something propelled me upstairs. It was time to have an honest conversation. They looked surprised to see me in the kitchen. "I thought you'd be asleep," Amanda said, setting down a small bakery box. "We brought you a cupcake. A single cupcake in a box. I stared at it, then at my daughter. "Can we talk?" I asked. "All of us as a family." James sighed dramatically. "It's late, Thelma." "It won't take long." I insisted with more firmness than I had shown in months. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had shared hundreds of meals together. The atmosphere was tense. "I need to understand what's happening," I began. "For months now, I've felt unwelcome in this home. A home I helped pay for. I've been excluded, criticized, and made to feel like an intruder. I want to know why." Amanda shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, you're being dramatic. We're just busy with our own lives. Is that why you've been looking at senior living brochures? Why James has been leaving apartment listings out for me to find? Why you've been checking my bank statements?" Their expressions confirmed what I already knew. James looked annoyed while Amanda had the grace to appear slightly ashamed. "Look, Thelma," James said, leaning forward, "the arrangement isn't working anymore. We need our space." "You seemed happy enough with the arrangement when I gave you $300,000, I countered. Amanda's face flushed. "That was a gift, Mom, not a payment for lifetime accommodations. A gift you've already diverted half of into your own investment account," I said quietly. They looked stunned that I knew this information. "You went through our papers?" James demanded, his voice rising. "I found them accidentally. Just like you accidentally went through my bank statements." The conversation quickly deteriorated. Amanda's voice grew louder, her words sharper. "Do you have any idea how exhausting it is having you here all the time? Always in our space, always with your opinions about how we should raise Lily, how we should spend our money." "I have barely expressed any opinions at all lately," I replied, my voice trembling. "I've been walking on eggshells trying not to upset you." "Because you know you're a burden." Amanda shouted, the words exploding from her. "You're a burden, Mom. We can't live like this anymore." The room fell silent. Her words hung in the air between us, impossible to take back. I felt as though I'd been physically struck. My own daughter, my only child, had just called me a burden. On my birthday. "Amanda," I said softly. "I had planned a surprise for all of us, for your birthday next month." Her expression shifted slightly, curiosity, temporarily replacing anger. "I booked a family vacation to Hawaii. First-class tickets, oceanfront suite, all expenses paid. I wanted to recreate the trip your father and I took to share that with you and Lily." Their demeanor changed instantly. James straightened up, suddenly interested. "Hawaii first class?" he asked. "Yes," I said. $25,000 for the whole package. I've already paid for the flights. We leave 4 weeks from Saturday." Amanda's eyes widened. "Mom, that's incredibly generous." The whiplash of their reaction would have been comical if it weren't so painful. Moments ago, I was a burden. Now that an expensive vacation was on the table, I was suddenly generous. James cleared his throat. "That sounds amazing, Thelma. Truly thoughtful. Why don't you just transfer the reservation to our names?" He suggested, his tone artificially light. "That way you don't have to worry about any of the details. We can handle everything." I looked at him incredulously. "You want me to just give you the vacation? After what was just said?" "Mom, I was upset." Amanda backpedaled. "I didn't mean it like that." "How exactly did you mean it then?" I asked. The conversation circled for another few minutes before James cut to the chase. "Look, transfer the reservations and the tickets to us, and we can sort out the living situation after we get back from Hawaii. A nice reset for everyone." I stood up slowly. "No, the tickets are in my name and I paid with my credit card. They stay that way." James's friendly facade dropped instantly. His face hardened as he exchanged a look with Amanda. "Then maybe it's best if you don't come back to this house after tonight," he said coldly. I stared at him in disbelief. "What? You heard him," Amanda said, not meeting my eyes. If you can't be reasonable about this, then maybe you should leave tonight. We've been patient long enough. You're putting me out tonight, it's 11 o'clock and it's raining. And you can get a hotel, James said dismissively. You clearly have the money for it. I looked at Amanda, waiting for her to contradict her husband to show some shred of compassion or filial duty. She said nothing, just stared at the table. Fine, I said, my voice barely audible. I'll pack a bag. I went downstairs in a state of shock. This couldn't be happening. They couldn't really be throwing me out in the middle of the night on my birthday because I wouldn't hand over an expensive vacation to them. But they were. I packed essentials into a suitcase, enough clothes for a few days' toiletries, medications, and important documents. As I was zipping the suitcase, I heard a small voice. Grandma, are you going somewhere? Lily stood in the doorway in her pajamas, clutching her teddy bear. I hadn't heard her come downstairs. Just for a little while, sweetheart, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. Grandma needs to take a little trip. But you'll come back, right? Her lower lip trembled. Before I could answer, Amanda appeared behind her. Lily, go back to bed, now. But Grandma's leaving. Grandma's just going on a vacation, Amanda said firmly, guiding Lily toward the stairs. Say good night. Lily broke away and ran to me, throwing her arms around my waist. I love you, Grandma. Please come back soon. I hugged her tightly, memorizing the feel of her small body against mine, the smell of her strawberry shampoo. I love you too, my precious girl, so very much. When Lily was gone, Amanda stood awkwardly in the doorway. You can come get the rest of your things later this week when we're not home. I'll text you when it's convenient. Not another word of explanation. No apology, no acknowledgement of the cruelty of the situation. My daughter, whom I had raised with love for 35 years, was treating me like an unwanted tenant. I wheeled my suitcase up the basement stairs and through the kitchen. James was nowhere to be seen. At the front door, I turned to Amanda. I gave you life, I said quietly. I gave you a home. I gave you $300,000. And you're putting me out in the rain on my birthday because I wouldn't give you a free vacation on top of everything else. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of shame in her eyes, but it vanished quickly. Call me when you're settled somewhere, she said, opening the door. The rain was coming down steadily as I pulled my suitcase to the end of the driveway and used my phone to call a taxi. I stood there, a 62-year-old woman, homeless on her birthday, watching the house where she had invested not just her money, but her heart. In that moment, something broke inside me. But something else, something stronger, began to form in its place. I spent that night at a hotel 5 miles from Amanda's house. The front desk clerk looked concerned when I arrived past midnight, soaking wet, despite my umbrella clearly distressed. I must have been quite a sight. An older woman checking into a hotel alone so late with eyes red from crying. Are you all right, ma'am? She asked gently. No, I answered honestly, but I will be. Once in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process what had happened. The betrayal was so complete, so shocking, that it felt unreal. How had my relationship with my daughter deteriorated to this point? When had money become more important to her than our bond? I barely slept that night. By morning, I had moved beyond shock into a strange clarity. I knew what I needed to do. First, I called my old friend Patricia. We had taught together for 20 years before both retiring. She was also a widow, having lost her husband 3 years before Gerald died. Thelma, what's wrong? You sound terrible, she said immediately. Through tears, I explained the situation, the initial arrangement, the growing tension, and finally, the cruel eviction on my birthday. Those ungrateful little... Patricia didn't finish the sentence. You come stay with me. I have the guest room all made up. I can't impose on you, I protested weakly. Impose Thelma Murray. We've been friends for 30 years. Get a taxi and come over right now. We'll figure this out together." Her immediate support gave me strength. After hanging up, I made another crucial call to my bank. I explained that I needed to protect my assets immediately. "I want to freeze all access to my accounts," I told the customer service representative, "and I need to cancel a significant charge that's pending." The representative was helpful and efficient. Within 20 minutes, my accounts were secure with new passwords and security measures in place. The tickets to Hawaii, which hadn't yet been fully processed in the system, were canceled with a refund pending to my card. My next call was to a law firm that specialized in elder law. The receptionist scheduled me for an emergency consultation that afternoon. "These situations happen more often than you'd think," she said sympathetically. "Our attorneys are very experienced in recovery of assets in cases like yours." By noon, I had checked out of the hotel and arrived at Patricia's comfortable townhouse. She welcomed me with a hug and a pot of tea. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said, guiding me to her sofa. "Tell me everything. Don't leave out a single detail." For the next 2 hours, I poured out the whole story. Patricia listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she shook her head in disbelief. "I always thought Amanda was a bit entitled, but this is beyond the pale," she said. "And to do this on your birthday, after all you've done for them. I keep wondering where I went wrong in raising her," I said, staring into my tea. Patricia reached over and squeezed my hand. "You didn't go wrong. Some people just become consumed by greed. You were generous, perhaps too generous, but that's not a flaw, Thelma. That's a virtue they took advantage of." At 3:00, I met with attorney Sarah Goldstein, a specialist in elder financial abuse. After hearing my story, she didn't mince words. "What they've done is unconscionable and possibly actionable," she said. "The $300,000 was clearly given with the understanding that you would have a permanent home with them. We can make a strong case for elder financial exploitation." "I don't want to sue my daughter," I said uncertainly. "I understand," Sarah replied gently. "But you need to protect yourself. At minimum, we should send a formal demand letter for the return of at least half the money. They can't have it both ways. Either it was a loan contingent on you having a place to live, or they need to buy you out of your interest in the house." I left her office with a plan in place. Sarah would draft a demand letter immediately, and we would proceed from there based on their response. When I returned to Patricia's house, my phone was full of missed calls and texts from Amanda and James. Apparently, they had discovered the canceled Hawaii tickets and frozen accounts. I listened to the first voicemail, my hand trembling. "Mom, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Amanda's voice was shrill with anger. "You can't just cancel everything like this. Call me back immediately." The next several messages grew increasingly hostile with James, eventually taking over to threaten legal action if I didn't honor my commitments. The final message, left just an hour ago, was from Amanda again this time, with a different tone. "Mom, please," she pleaded, her voice artificially sweet. "We're sorry about last night. We were tired and said things we didn't mean. Come home and we'll talk this through. The Hawaii trip meant so much to all of us." The manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. They had thrown me out like garbage, but now that their expensive vacation was in jeopardy, they were suddenly remorseful. I texted Amanda a brief message. "I am safe. I will be in touch through my attorney regarding the house and the funds I contributed. Please do not contact me otherwise until I am ready." Then I turned off my phone, feeling both terrified and strangely liberated. For the first time in over a year and a half, I was setting boundaries with my daughter. It felt foreign, but necessary. That evening, Patricia and I sat on her patio with glasses of wine. "What now?" she asked gently. I looked up at the stars barely visible through the light pollution of the city. "I start over, I guess. At 62. "You're not starting from nothing," Patricia reminded me. "You have your teacher's pension. You have the money you kept from the house sale, and you have friends who love you." She was right, of course. I had resources many people in my situation wouldn't have, and I had spent so long feeling like a burden that I had forgotten my own strength. The next morning, I turned my phone back on to find more messages from Amanda and James, alternating between anger and false contrition. I deleted them all without listening. Instead, I called a real estate agent Patricia had recommended. "I need a small apartment or condo," I explained. "Something I can afford on my pension with enough space for me to live comfortably." Within days, I had found a modest one-bedroom condo in a building for residents 55 and older. It was nothing fancy, but it was clean, secure, and most importantly, mine. I used some of my savings for the down payment and arranged a small mortgage for the balance. When Amanda discovered I was buying property, the tone of her messages changed again. "Mom, this is ridiculous," she texted. "You're overreacting to one bad night. We can work this out without lawyers and real estate agents." I didn't respond. My attorney had advised minimal contact until we had resolved the financial matters, and I was following her advice. 2 weeks after being thrown out of my daughter's house, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my next-door neighbor from Amanda's street. "Mrs. Murray, it's Carol from next door. I hope it's okay that I got your number from the school directory. Lily gave it to me." "Of course, Carol. Is everything all right? I just thought you should know that Lily's been asking about you constantly. She stands at the window watching for you every day after school. Amanda told her you went on a long trip, but Lily doesn't believe it. She knows something's wrong." My heart ached at the thought of my granddaughter waiting for me. "Thank you for telling me, Carol. Please, if you see Lily, just tell her that Grandma loves her very much, and I'll see her as soon as I can." After that call, I wrote Lily a letter, an actual handwritten letter on stationery with butterflies in the corners. I explained that Grandma needed to live in her own house now, but that I wasn't far away and would see her very soon. I included a small, stuffed elephant, her favorite animal, and mailed the package to Carol's address with a note asking her to deliver it to Lily when Amanda wasn't watching. A week later, my attorney received the first response from Amanda and James's lawyer. They were disputing my claim to any portion of the house value, maintaining that the money was an unconditional gift. They also demanded I return several items from the house that they claimed were theirs, including jewelry that had been my mother's. The battle had begun, and it was uglier than I had imagined possible. But as I stood in my new living room arranging the few possessions I had managed to retrieve from their house, I knew one thing with certainty. I would never allow myself to be made to feel like a burden again. "You need to get out more," Patricia declared on a Saturday morning about a month after I'd moved into my condo. She had been my lifeline through this difficult period, checking on me daily, and often bringing meals or small housewarming gifts for my new place. "I'm still getting settled," I protested weakly. The truth was, I had barely left my condo except for necessities. The shock and shame of my situation had turned me into something of a hermit. "There's a support group at the community center," Patricia continued, ignoring my excuse. "It's for seniors who've experienced financial exploitation or elder abuse. The next meeting is this afternoon, and I'm taking you." "I don't know if I'm ready to talk about it with strangers," I said. Patricia fixed me with a stern look. "Thelma Murray, you spent 40 years helping children grow stronger. Now it's time to help yourself. You're going." That afternoon, I found myself in a sunny room at the local community center, sitting in a circle with 8 other seniors. The group was led by a compassionate social worker named Denise. "We all have different stories," Denise explained, "but the common thread is betrayal by those we trusted. Here there's no judgment, only understanding and practical support." Listening to the others share their experiences was revelatory. A 70-year-old man had been swindled out of his retirement by his son-in-law's investment scheme. A A 68-year-old woman had signed over her house to her nephew, who promptly evicted her. Each story was unique yet familiar in its essence. When my turn came, I surprised myself by speaking clearly and calmly about what had happened. Saying the words aloud to this group of understanding strangers was cathartic in a way I hadn't anticipated. "You did the right thing by acting quickly," Denise assured me after I finished. "Many people in your situation wait until it's too late to recover anything." The group became a cornerstone of my new life. I attended weekly, gradually forming friendships with the other members. We shared resources, supported each other through legal battles, and celebrated small victories. Through the group, I connected with a part-time tutoring service that matched retired teachers with students needing extra help. 3 afternoons a week, I began tutoring struggling readers at an after-school program. The work was familiar and fulfilling, and the modest income supplemented my pension. Meanwhile, the legal process ground slowly forward. My attorney filed a formal claim against Amanda and James, seeking recovery of half the money I had given them, based on breach of the implied contract that I would have a permanent home with them. Their attorney responded with increasingly aggressive tactics, even suggesting that I had been an unfit guest who had created a hostile living environment. It was painful to see how far they were willing to go to keep the money. 3 months after being thrown out, I received the first piece of good news in the case. The judge assigned to our dispute ordered mediation, expressing a preliminary view that there had clearly been an understanding that my financial contribution was tied to my living situation. On a Tuesday morning in February, 4 months after my disastrous birthday, we met in a sterile conference room at the courthouse. It was the first time I had seen Amanda and James since that rainy night. They looked uncomfortable but defiant, barely acknowledging me as we took our seats on opposite sides of the table. The mediator, a retired judge, was direct and no-nonsense. "Let's be clear," he began. "The court takes a very dim view of situations where elderly parents are encouraged to contribute substantial assets to their children's households and then find themselves unwelcome. Whether or not there was a formal contract, there was certainly a reasonable expectation of security." James started to protest, but the mediator cut him off. "I've reviewed the case thoroughly. Mrs. Murray provided $300,000 toward your mortgage with the understanding she would live with you. 18 months later, you put her out in the rain at night. Those are not disputed facts." By the end of a tense 4-hour session, we reached a settlement. They would pay me back $150,000, half of my original contribution. The payment would be structured over 3 years, secured by a lien against their house. It wasn't everything I had hoped for, but it was a vindication of sorts. As we were preparing to leave, I finally made direct eye contact with Amanda. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the daughter I had raised, a hint of shame or regret behind her defensive exterior. "What about Lily?" I asked quietly. "I miss her terribly." Amanda hesitated. "We can talk about visitation," she said stiffly. "Maybe supervised visits at first at a neutral location." It wasn't ideal, but it was a start. We arranged that I could see Lily every other Saturday at the local library for 2 hours. The first visit was scheduled for the following weekend. That Saturday, I arrived at the library 30 minutes early, nervous and excited. When Amanda walked in with Lily, my heart nearly burst. Lily spotted me and broke free from her mother's hand, running toward me. "Grandma, you're really here," she exclaimed as I knelt to embrace her. "I got your letter, and the elephant, I sleep with him every night." For 2 precious hours, we read books, colored pictures, and caught up on all the kindergarten news I had missed. Amanda sat stiffly at a nearby table, pretending to read, but watching us constantly. When it was time to leave, Lily clung to me. "Why can't you come home with us?" she asked. "Grandma has her own home now," I explained gently. "But we'll see each other very often, I promise." As they left, Amanda gave me a small nod. Not friendly, but not hostile either. It was a tiny acknowledgement that perhaps someday some form of relationship might be salvaged. Back at my condo, I reflected on how much had changed in 4 months. I had gone from feeling worthless and dependent to establishing a new life on my terms. I had stood up for myself legally and emotionally. I had reconnected with my passion for teaching through tutoring. And I had begun to build a community of friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. The money I had planned to spend on the Hawaii vacation was now invested in a secure retirement account. The anger and betrayal I had felt were gradually being replaced by something unexpected: gratitude for the harsh lesson that had ultimately set me free from an exploitative situation. That evening, I attended a community potluck dinner in my building's common room. As I chatted with my new neighbors and shared the coconut cake I had baked, I realized I was smiling genuinely for the first time in months. One of my neighbors, a kind widower named Robert, went out of his way to make me feel welcome, saving me a seat and bringing me a cup of coffee just the way I liked it. "You seem different tonight," Patricia commented when I called her later. "More like the old Thelma." "I think I'm finally finding my footing," I replied. "It's not the life I expected to have at 62, but it's becoming a good life all the same." The path forward wasn't perfectly clear, but I had discovered a resilience within myself that I never knew I possessed. From the ashes of betrayal, I was building something new, a life defined not by what I gave to others, but by my own worth and choices. 1 year after the night I was thrown out of Amanda's house, I stood in my condo's kitchen, putting the finishing touches on a birthday cake. Not for myself this time, but for the small gathering of friends who had become my chosen family over the past year. Patricia was the first to arrive, bringing a bottle of champagne and a warm hug. "Happy rebirthday," she said with a smile. "1 year of your new life." Robert came next, the widower from my building, who had gradually become an important part of my life. What had started as neighborly kindness had evolved into weekly dinner dates and long walks in the nearby park. At 67, he was thoughtful and gentle, with none of the entitlement I had grown to recognize in James. Members of my support group arrived, along with a couple of teachers I had reconnected with. By 6 o'clock, my small living room was filled with conversation and laughter. Looking around at these people who had supported me through the darkest period of my life, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. None of them had known me in my previous life, the accommodating mother who had sacrificed her financial security in a misguided attempt to buy her daughter's love. They knew only the woman I had become, stronger, wiser, and far less willing to be taken advantage of. The legal battle with Amanda and James had finally concluded 3 months earlier. After numerous delays and attempts to renegotiate, they had made the first substantial payment toward the settlement. Our relationship remained strained, but the supervised visits with Lily had gradually expanded. I now saw her every Wednesday afternoon and alternate Saturdays, and we had developed a lovely routine of library visits, baking projects, and story times. Amanda had begun to thaw slightly during the handovers, occasionally sharing small updates about Lily's school or activities. There had been no apology, no real acknowledgement of the wrong they had done, but there were tiny steps toward a civil coexistence. I had used part of the settlement money to furnish a small bedroom in my condo specifically for Lily. She had helped choose the lavender paint for the walls and the butterfly bedspread. The room stood ready for the day, still in the future, when she might be allowed to stay overnight with me. My tutoring work had expanded to nearly full-time hours. I had discovered a particular affinity for working with dyslexic students and had taken specialized training to better serve them. The work was rewarding, both emotionally and financially, allowing me to rebuild my savings gradually. Robert tapped his glass with a spoon, drawing everyone's attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," he said, smiling at me, "to Thelma, who taught all of us what resilience truly means. When life knocked you down, you didn't just get back up, you soared. As glasses were raised around the room, I felt my eyes grow misty. From the depths of betrayal and humiliation, I had indeed found my way to something precious: self-respect and authentic connections. Later that evening, after my guests had gone and Robert had helped with the last of the cleanup, we sat on my small balcony, watching the sunset. "I have something for you," he said, handing me a small envelope. Inside was a brochure for a weekend trip to a nearby coastal town, known for its art galleries and scenic views. "I thought maybe we could go next month," he said. "Just a small getaway. The inn has wonderful reviews, and there's a glass-blowing studio that gives lessons to beginners." I smiled, touched by his thoughtfulness. "It looks perfect." A year ago, I would have insisted on paying for everyone trying to buy affection and belonging. Now I understood the difference between generosity and self-erasure. I could accept Robert's gift for what it was: a gesture of caring, not a transaction or obligation. The next morning, I received an unexpected text from Amanda. "Lily has a school performance next Friday, 4 p.m. She asked if you could come." It wasn't much. No warmth, no personal invitation. But it was an opening. I replied simply, "I'll be there. Thank you." That afternoon, I met with a financial advisor to review my retirement plan. With careful management, my pension tutoring income and the settlement payments would provide a secure, if modest, future. I would never again be in a position to give away hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I would never again feel compelled to buy my place in someone's life. As I walked home through the park, I reflected on the painful lesson I had learned at 62. True love, whether familial, romantic, or friendly, never treats you as a burden or values you only for what you can provide. Real love sees your worth inherently, respects your boundaries, and enriches rather than diminishes you. I couldn't change Amanda's character or undo the hurt she and James had caused, but I could change how I responded to it, how I valued myself, and how I built my life going forward. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been nights of crushing loneliness, moments of doubt, and times when the sense of betrayal had felt overwhelming. But with each small step, each boundary maintained, each new friendship formed, each skill reclaimed, I had rebuilt myself stronger than before. The Hawaii vacation that never happened had turned out to be the most valuable gift I could have given myself, not because of the experience it would have provided, but because canceling it had been my first act of self-respect after years of self-sacrifice. As I reached my building, my phone buzzed with a text from Lily's after-school program. She had drawn a picture of the two of us labeled Grandma and me at the library. The simple drawing brought tears to my eyes, a reminder that even in the most painful circumstances, love can endure. I would never again allow myself to be made to feel like a burden by those who should cherish me. I had learned to recognize my own value, to set healthy boundaries, and to distinguish between generosity and self-erasure. At 63, I had finally learned that the most important relationship I would ever have was the one with myself. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family members who took advantage of your generosity? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and rebuild your life on your own terms. Thank you for joining me today, and may you always know your true worth.